The Business Journal Roundtable series is sponsored by iSynergy, creative digital advertising.
So we begin the roundtable with introductions. We'll start with Adrienne. If you want to start with, we'll go this way and tell your name, your title, and please be sure to speak up so Mary can get it all down. And just a little bit about your company.
Sure. My name is Adrienne Sabo. I'm founder and creative director at Clever. And we're actually just celebrating our third year this year, so we're very excited. We are a branding, marketing, and digital agency. We just were sort of founded with the belief in great creative ideas and being a creative house, and we felt like that was a niche that we could serve here in the area.
Okay. Rebecca.
Good morning, everyone. I am Rebecca Bayley. I'm a consultant with Pecchia Communications. We have been around since 2005. And one of our mottos is affordable expertise. So we have a small but mighty staff with many, many decades of experience in PR, content marketing, and change management. We pioneered the remote model since day one, actually. So when COVID came, we were able to efficiently serve our clients. And very happy to be here. We have wonderful local clients as well as an expansive national roster at this point.
Very good.
Hello, I'm Cailyn Chrystal. I'm the Director of Operations and Client Services with 898 Marketing. We're coming up on our 10-year anniversary next year, and I've been with 898 for 8 years. And yeah, one of our missions is that we're called to serve, whether it's the community, our clients, each other. We just like to say we're called to serve. So yeah.
Steve Cross, Creative Director of iSynergy. We're based in Canfield, Ohio, founded in 2011. Integrated digital marketing agency. Everything digital exists on the internet. We kind of implement and take advantage of.
And by the way, I neglected to mention Steve Cross and iSynergy is the sponsor of our quarterly roundtable series. So thank you for that, Steve.
I'm Jeff Hedrich. I'm the owner of the Prodigal Company. We were founded, it'll be 30 years next year, and I'm only 45, so you can imagine that as a 15-year-old. We focus on trying to understand what a client's competitive advantages are. We have a process to identify that. And then it's about then taking those competitive advantages, translating them into creative, and then, of course, how do you deliver that message? So that's been our focus for 30 years and remains so.
Hi, I'm George Farris, CEO of Farris Marketing. We started in '87. I was a baby. Thank you. And then our focus has been, since the beginning, a combination of both for-profit and non-profits, as well as public agencies and related firms that serve those public agencies.
Okay, well, now we'll go in reverse order, and I'm looking over the topics that I suggested that we might discuss, and the one that kind of grabs me because I don't know a whole lot about it is, tell me about influencer marketing. I assume I'm totally out of it because I don't do Instagram, and I don't do a lot of different things. So who are these influencers, and do we have any locally? Who's doing influencer marketing, and how is it done?
Well, I don't know how much is done locally, but anyone that would like to have someone, influencer means exactly what it is. It's someone who already has a good following on social media, and you hire them to be your spokesperson, or at least to promote your product in some form or another. It used to be you just had a few to choose from, but now there's so many that there's actually several agencies that you could go to who help you choose an influencer and bargain for you, etc., based on the specialty or based on the demographics or the product you're selling. So it's pretty pervasive now. I don't know how much locally, but certainly nationally and internationally.
Jeff?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat. George did a great job of explaining. I guess a couple things. We do work with some influencers, mostly Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Columbus markets, and it can be a process trying to identify that right fit, that right person. Someone may have the followers, but not always, be cooperative in terms of the kind of content they produce and the things that work. So it's really powerful. I mean, in one level, we've always been trying to reach influencers, right? In terms of just who are the influencers in the community, who makes buying decisions. But in this case, yeah, it's definitely a social media phenomenon. It's here to stay. And, you should dive into it, and it can be really productive. But like any marketing tactic, sometimes it doesn't work, and you have to go on to the next person. So, but it's very productive, especially, of course, more in it's not so much B2B, it's B2C primarily. Not
Speaking
only.
of what doesn't work, Bud Light has got itself in a buzzsaw when it
Right.
tried. So what was the thinking there? How did they come across this gender fluid person to drink Bud Light, and then suddenly Kid Rock and a whole bunch of other influencers decided that Bud Light didn't taste so good anymore?
Right. Yeah, obviously they apparently didn't have understanding, of their market, the Bud Light market, who their audience was, and they're trying to do something that audience wasn't ready for. Other audiences, that would have been probably not even seen as an issue. There's lots of other alcohols that use influencers of many persuasions that you don't see that pushback. So it was just kind of a monumental error on their part, whoever the decision makers were, on not understanding their audience, and this would not be acceptable. So, I think the main thing is you look, well, how are they supposed to recover from that? I think it's more time than anything. They've tried various things. I haven't heard anybody come up with, here's what you should do, Bud Light, right? That seems productive to me.
No, it's going to take
So-
time. They lost $6 billion in market valuation.
Yeah.
And it's, that just really brings up a bigger issue. How much should our clients be involved in and make commentary on political issues? I mean, people say they want to have a social conscious, but, from a marketing perspective, unless you're willing to completely cut out a market like Bud Light found out, wanting to, you have to be very careful what you say, because especially today is such a polarized society. What makes one group happy makes the other unhappy. So there's already conferences just to discuss how much companies should be involved with politically sensitive subjects.
Steve?
Yeah, they were too focused on expanding their market reach and didn't have the right data and research on their existing client base, and what was going to upset them and what was going to turn them off from the product. That's my belief on it. It's less about, I think, influencer marketing, but I think to bring it back to influencer marketing, I think it's one thing you always have to do is the attribution. You got to be able to close the loop to make sure what you're paying that influencer, that content, you're getting it back. What's the goal? You got to properly communicate that in a brief to them. Is it transactions? If it's like an e-commerce client, is it just reach, impressions? What is that that you're trying to gain out of them? And the best influencers work with you back and forth on that. Our role as an agency is we put the influencers, like you talked about, with the right demographic, the right vertical, the right segments, with the proper clients, and then making sure that they work together for that goal. Without that, and having like the proper pixels or the codes to show attribution on the transactions or the coupon codes, you don't know how successful that campaign was in retrospect to look back on it to see if it was a success or not.
Just to kind of bring it back to local influencer marketing, I agree that I don't know that we have a ton of local influencers here. We also have kind of used people from Pittsburgh and Cleveland. Something recently we have gotten a little bit more into with some of our clients, though, is going through the NIL portal with college athletes, with YSU athletes. So we've kind of tapped into that for one of our fitness brands that we work with, using some of those college athletes who do have a pretty large following, whether it's locally or nationally, because a lot of them aren't originally from here. So we've kind of tapped into that to get to their followers who are kind of our target audience.
I think to your question, Andrea, when you said what is influencer marketing too, it might be an easy way to think about it is that we've always had influence marketers, they've just been spokespeople, right? So previously it was paid celebrities or paid people and they were really heavily associated with the brand. So if you think like Michael Jordan and Nike, or something like that. They always have them. But now with social media, so much of marketing has been democratized that people want to see themselves reflected back. So they're really trying to make those connections with influencers. So influencers, they might not be someone from your community, but there's someone that you can relate to in some regard. So like Steve was saying, if you have that correct demographic, clients or potential consumers are going to be more apt to trust that person as an authority. Again, locally, I don't think that we have many local influencers that have that traditional influencer relationship, but there are certainly people that, even from a social media standpoint, that you see, they're continually in chat rooms, they have large organic followings on their social media pages, things like that, that maybe we all should explore those people. I don't know.
Yeah, and to add to the influencer discussion, I think there's been a shift from like just general broad influencers to more content creators and very content specific. And I think users are gravitating towards that more than the general influencers. I feel like the general influencers sort of blew up during COVID, and it was like we were all stuck at home, so let's watch these people's lives. And their lives have sort of become unattainable to some degree. Like they're in these huge houses and this luxury lifestyle that isn't relatable to where they were 3-4 years ago. So I think the content creators that are industry specific, you know, if there's fitness or food or home decor, like those are the people that I see that are becoming more successful because they're focused on one area and they're sort of becoming like a knowledge expert instead of just this general lifestyle blogger that had sort of been the beginning.
So if I'm watching a television commercial, am I going to know that that person's an influencer
I
for a
would
certain
say
product?
It's mostly, I would say, larger on social media.
Yeah,
So
on
some
social media.
influencers
So I have to be on their site, and they have to be plugging whatever they're supposed to be plugging.
Yeah,
No.
Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I mean, Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, I would say, are the top 3 that an influencer would be on. And if they're using all 3 properly, you know, they're doing their deep dives on YouTube and linking it from their Instagram and sharing their daily life in their stories. And I mean, they're on their phones all day long.
And while sharing their stories, they're talking about this product.
Yes, and you can tell, I feel like, the ones who are linking everything from Amazon Prime Day, they're just after that affiliate marketing. Do you know what I mean? They want that code, you know, they want those sales. And then you find the people who have true brand partnerships, you know, the makeup influencer who's got a partnership with Mac or Tower 28, you know what I mean? And they really go into what makes the product different and unique and how they use it. And
I think Rebecca was right, though, to follow up on what she said about it's not a lot different than celebrity endorsements. Like we used to bring Cleveland Browns players down to be in commercials for car dealers that we work for, you know, and, you know, they're given a direct pitch. You know, the moment they walk off that set, they're probably driving a different brand back to Cleveland, but, you know, they're clearly paid and, you know, their connection with the dealership, especially perhaps during football season or something, creates a little bit more notice. It's just the whole influencer on social media, there's a lot more work involved on their part. They're not coming down and giving 3 lines and saying, hey, don't forget to shop here. You know, they're investing some time in learning about the product, explaining it, you know, and recommending it. So they're a little bit busier, but they also have a great reward possibly for a long time.
So who are some of these people and how much money are they making?
Well, the Paul brothers is a good example from somebody that, you know, watches sports and that. I mean, they still in their 20s making, you know, depending on which brother, but anywhere from $10 to $30 million a year, just from revenue that they get from their own sites, merchandise they sell, and then everything they're paid to promote.
What's their last name?
Paul, P-A-U-L.
Jake Paul and Logan Paul.
They're brothers.
Okay.
You
See,
look very confused.
okay, so
they're originally from Cleveland, right?
so why do I care about J. Paul and his brother?
Because they have a following. People listen to them.
Huge following.
Huge.
If they say buy this product, their followers will buy that product.
They're creating lots of other content to follow their life, their lifestyle, their activities. Like these guys are into combat sports and so forth, so they develop this following. So again, it's not, in their case, not like Michael Jordan. He's a great basketball player. Okay, he says these shoes, again, very, very limited. These guys, it's not just their combat sports, but their lifestyle. So they have recommendations. Hey, if you're they tend to be males they're influencing. And so
They're easier influenced. They're easier to influence.
Yeah. So, and there's regional people too, like we're talking, they're not all as prominent as national as the Paul brothers. So if you have somebody in the Cleveland market who has couple 100,000 followers, and this woman's always posting about things to do in your home and how to make your home beautified. And then again, she works in kind of like product placement, right? She's going to work in, and I got this at whatever store it is.
When you say Kardashians, we're probably
I was
the
just
first.
going to say,
Yeah.
here's one
That's
you'll know.
good.
The
Yeah.
Kardashians.
Yeah.
Still among
We're
the
talking
biggest.
millions for one post,
Paris
I would
Hilton.
say. Just one
Paris
video
Hilton.
post.
She was one of the first, yeah.
She's the one.
So this brings me to all of the changes in the social media market. And so what's a business to do? There's social media, traditional media, digital media, there's all this stuff, and it's all changing really rapidly. And folks are confused. What's to do? Let's go over to this side.
Yeah, I think that, there are so many different forms of media today and so many options. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, though. I think it just gives businesses more opportunities, to choose what's right for them. I think it's important for them to understand, what each type of media is and what it's good for. But I think, coming to people like us who can kind of help them navigate that, depending on what their goals are, what their budgets are, what their target audience is, we can help them kind of decide what type of media is best. If it is social media, if it is programmatic digital or something like that.
Steve, can you give an example of what you would do with when a company comes to you and says, I have no idea what to do? Maybe they're selling widgets. Would you put them in social media?
It depends on the client. I don't think every single business out there should be on social media and should have a huge budget and a huge priority on social media. I think it depends on like she just said, the goals. What are you trying to achieve? Social media isn't for everybody. I tell people, if you're not going to do it well, don't do it at all, because bad social media is worse than no social media at all. That's just our opinion in our house. But it's about creating content. It's about, we always post social media for our clients as a behind the scenes. Who is this client? Who is this business? What do they do? How do they do it? So you understand, because buyers want to know the why behind who they're doing business with. It's not exactly what the widget is that they're purchasing. Apple's a great example. iPhone is probably a worse phone than Samsung, but people love the brand. People love the why. So that's why they stay with an iPhone and Apple. But it's not for everyone. It depends on the mix. Sometimes it makes complete sense to go all in. Sometimes it means go all in organically. Sometimes it's paid. Sometimes there's a balance there, but more often than not, it always starts with content and how you're going to activate that content, either through social media, through your own places, or different channels.
Anybody, please.
Well, much like with the Bud Light discussion we were having, I think it's very important, like Steve said, you have to have the data on who you're trying to reach. So if your demographic that you're trying to reach is, elderly or incredibly young, there's different channels that you're going to access them through. So without having that start with that good data, it'll be misguided regardless of your budget.
I would follow up on what Steve said about if you can't do it well, don't do it, from a standpoint. Social media, Forbes says that 93% of small businesses struggle with social media. That's because, hey, this looks like a great free idea. Let me do it. And they do it once, and then if you go and look at I would say half of the businesses in the Mahoning Valley, if you go to their social media right now, the last post was 2022. Merry Christmas or Happy New Year, maybe. And so, it's not their fault. I mean, if you're, my family's been in small businesses forever. You're busy. You're, putting the stock out, you're ordering, you're hiring, you're firing, you're doing all kind of stuff if you're a business owner. So social media, while technically it's free, is not, the solution for every small business, because it still takes a lot of work. So that's why they tend to hire somebody, and hopefully would hire somebody.
Jeff?
Well, I think the thing to remember when you talk about all the choices, but people consume so much media, supposedly 9 hours a day. Sometimes it's hard to believe that's true, but those are the stats that show. So my point is, yes, there's a lot of media choices, but people are consuming it all the time, whether on their phones, television, doesn't matter whether it's streaming or it's cable or broadcast, magazines. I mean, we just consume media. So I think all those channels are necessary and welcome. Obviously, some come and go, but we live in a society of media consumption. So there should be multiple channels then.
And there is a generation gap. Who consumes what?
And where? And where? I mean, you have a definitely younger demographic on your TikTok, for sure.
Yeah.
You have an older demographic on Facebook. You have a more professionally driven demographic on LinkedIn. They're there to network and find jobs and make career connections. So we definitely don't like to recommend, you don't have to be on all platforms, right? If that's not where your market is. And also the same strategy doesn't work on every platform. Posting the same content on Instagram and LinkedIn, probably not the best idea unless your audiences are very similar, which I would doubt on those two platforms would be the same. So you definitely need to look at who you're trying to target. And, you know, I feel like Facebook is a slightly older demographic. It's still very strong in this area. It still is not, which always shocks, I feel like, people from out of town, how strong it is here, and that we still use it as much as we do. And you know, it still is a very valuable, everyone thinks it's gonna go away. But there's also, I would say, the launch of new ones. So Threads came out, and I feel like everybody hopped on Threads just to try and get on it. And I feel like it sort of fizzled a little bit. There was Lemonade. Lemonade was out like a couple months before that. It was very, they were describing it as the new Pinterest. There's still Pinterest, you know what I mean? It is still popular. So I think there's a lot of people feel the need to hop on the next big thing, and it may not be the big thing.
Right.
I think to put a bow on the social media with local businesses that struggle with it, I think a lot of times they have a difficulty trying to sell their product or their service. And I think they look at social media of, well, how do I sell on this? 90% of the time, you should just be giving content. You should just be giving, you know, value to your audience. At the most, 10% of the time, you should be selling on social media. Because if all you are is just sell, people will tune you out, they'll unfollow, and they want nothing to do with your brand.
So that brings us to content marketing. And that's a term that, I don't know, I guess maybe it was always here, but it reached my brain about 20 years or so ago. So what is content marketing, and why, how has it changed what you do?
Content marketing is technically, usually refers to more like blogs and things like that. How you would differentiate that from selling or the selling sort of marketing instead of content marketing is that it typically is content that is like how to, here's a tip, here's interest. It's content that just draws interest from your target demographic or your target audience, but it doesn't directly sell. And that's probably overall the biggest difference, I would say. Usually there's a lot more volume, which connects to AI. I know that's another topic today. And you know, writing blogs that are 600 words or 450 or something like that, takes a lot more time than writing a social media post with 280 characters or something, you know.
Jeff, how do you use content marketing?
Yeah, a number of ways, but it doesn't have to be digital. So for example, our most successful business development tool for a B2B client is a magazine that they do. They get more, it's B2B, it's a financial institution, it's in several markets now, and most of our leads come, but we are not selling the client's product so much as we're sharing who their customers are and their stories, and other people like that want to read the stories of these entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And so, but of course they find out in the stories that they work with my client, and they get their financing through my client, and that leads to business. So that'd be, of course, we're trying to sell, we're using the content to try to sell, but it's not direct selling. In this case, it's storytelling about people who happen to then, of course, utilize our client, and then that drives business. So that would be an example. So of content marketing. It's not social media driven, but it's content marketing.
Yeah, content marketing at its core is developing content to place that company or that brand as the authority in their space. It doesn't matter if it's digital, doesn't matter if it's a magazine. What they're doing is you're setting up your client to be the authority in their space. So that way people look at them, they follow them. They're like, yep, that's good content. I want to read and understand and you know, digest everything that this brand puts out because it's good content. It's not a 400-word blog that doesn't give you anything. If you have a 2,000-word blog that actually dives deep into a topic that people will bookmark and they'll share on social media, then you set yourself up as being the authority, and it's not just some, hey, here's a top 10 list. So that's kind of, at its core, it's the content, setting yourself up as the authority. All the channels are just the activation of that content. And then when you get them on site, it's the psychology of, data is currency now. So you get them to sign up, you get their email address, so that way you can remarket to them. And it's the funnel or the flywheel, whichever platform you talk to. And it's just nurturing that lead and that audience down the funnel till they get to the sales side.
But not only do you have conversion opportunities with content marketing, particularly digital, you've also, then you have to bring in the whole SEO aspect to that. So if you're writing content with the notion of making your client an authority or making them relatable to a potential consumer, but you're also peppering that with those SEO terms and those backlinks, you're getting like George, if you're spending a lot more time on that, the payout could be greater from a business perspective. So it's, I'd say
And it lasts
80%.
longer.
Yeah, it lasts longer.
And it also is useful if you use like what we call like a pillar content strategy. So if you're writing that blog that is 10 things, I can break that into 10 social posts. So now I'm able to drip that on my social. So it's not this whole other bucket that's over here that I have to do. It is a part of the mix of everything. And how do you sort of get legs out of what you're doing? We like to look at how can I educate, how can I engage, and how can I entertain, or sort of the three buckets we try and look at of what is going to make great content for clients.
So we hear about SEO and optimization, and the small businessman probably has no idea what that really means. And so you could say, okay, you've got to use these keywords or this or that. Doesn't it really take professionals such as yourselves to get involved in SEO? I mean, if you're a small business.
I think it's a lot to do
Especially
yourself.
Very
It's a lot.
technical, so, yeah, it's not really something that,
So you're writing your content for SEO. How does that work?
yeah, but it's also more, things like meta tags and a lot of things like that are technical aspects of your website. So, and Steve's probably more of an expert on that, but there's so many aspects of it. Basically, you're creating your website, in a sense, to please Google. Because Google has, 92% or something of the
market
searches?
share.
Was it?
Just a little.
Yeah, a little bit of a market. So basically, you're creating your website and the content in there to please Google. So you just got to stay up on what Google wants, and then either you do it or you have some other professional do it. So
Then you're structuring it in a way that hopefully they'll find you by. So what words are they searching? What are your competitors doing is a great place to start as well. Seeing what keywords they're using, what their content is like, and then using that to inform how not only you do the back end actual descriptions and keywords and meta, but also doing how I write my copy, how I structure my copy, where I put those words, how I tag my images to make sure that word is in my image, so when it comes up, it says it is whatever it is. Making sure it's in my Google My Business profile, making sure those words are being used on. So, I mean, it can be across the board as much as you can be consistent with that. But then you have to monitor it as well. And if the market changes or if the keywords are changing or you're not doing well, you have to be able to pivot and make those adjustments. So it is
Complicated.
a whole nother beast that I think
It doesn't
people...
have to be though. I think you touched about with Google My Business. There's certain components of SEO, like local SEO, where business owners can do that very easy, and they should do that, and they should set it up. They shouldn't necessarily, until they get to an intermediate or expert level of needing help, they can do all that on their own, like Google, or it's Google Business Profile now is what it's called, GBP. But it's their knowledge card when somebody searches their brand or their services to fully fill that out with their name, their description, the forms of payment they take, their hours, and make sure it matches on their website.
And confirm it.
Yeah,
That I feel like
yeah,
is
right,
the biggest thing we
yeah,
run into is people not claiming their
Claiming
page.
their profile.
They do all the work and then they never do
Yeah.
the last step, which is, the authorization from Google saying I am who I am. Is
Get
like
the code, put the code.
get the code, put the code
Could you
in.
elaborate on that? So it's a simple task that businesses do, but I'm guessing a lot in the Mahoning Valley are not doing it.
They don't. And Google literally tells you, do this and we will help you be found. That's what Google's goal is, to help users find what they're looking for. It's not to take their money, but it probably is.
Yeah.
But, but it's if they build out their profile, and it's called a citation. So they should, even if they don't do social media, they need to create a Facebook page. because that's a citation. The more times your name, address, and phone number show up on the internet consistently, the higher you rank in Google locally. It's like votes. The more citations you have, the more votes you have, the higher you rank. And those are just simple things. You have all that information as a business owner. You have your name, you have your address, you have your phone number, you have a short business description, you have a long business description, your business hours, you have associations you belong to. They can fill all that out real easy. The only thing we do as an agency is we give them a spreadsheet so that way they can't mess it up, and they fill it all out, and then we copy and paste it and put it in the profile for them. That's all we do for local SEO.
Yeah, I want to say that I feel like in the last, I don't know if my colleagues agree, last 3 or 4 years, I think most business owners now do have a general understanding of SEO, that they need to do it. They may not be expert in execution, so I think there's been progress. So I can't remember last time we talked about that to someone, they just didn't even know what we were talking about or felt it was. So, and then I think it does create an issue when everyone is doing SEO, and at least recently competent. I'm struggling to see if you can see the competitive advantage by having great SEO like you used to. In other words, if you were doing it for someone, right, and most of your competitors aren't doing it, yeah, you're going to rise to the top when everyone's doing at least adequate at it. Not everyone could be number 1 or number 2, right? So I'm just saying that I feel like there's a little shift going on. You need to do it, but otherwise you're going to fall behind. I don't know. I think it's more difficult to be a leader when many people are using the same tools. There's lots of tools you mentioned, and younger generations coming up. You might have an older owner, but his son or daughter is involved in the business and they understand it. So there's definitely been a change in my view in the last few years.
And the understanding that they need to continuously do it. If you get to number 1 this week, you're going to be number 3 next week if you turn it off and you stop doing it. Everybody's battling for that top spot.
I think it's always an interesting conversation to have with a new prospective client from our end too, when you discuss SEO with them and the way they perceive themselves. And if you said, well, what would your keywords be? Or what would this be? And from our perspective, we're like, that's not going to go anywhere. That's not how people search things. That's not what people look things up as. So that is why you really need professionals in there to know what that formula is in Google, what those types of words people look for are, because the business owner could be way off.
Well, let's move to the fun one, artificial intelligence. Are you using artificial intelligence in creating content?
Yes.
You are. All right, Jeff, tell us, how does it work?
2 areas. Copywriting, most definitively, have found that it's not about writing a finished article or ad, but for example, it can really help organize your content, can bring things, it just accelerates the process. So I just finished a project, probably would normally take me 10 hours to write. I think it took 4.5. So again, the final product wasn't, I wouldn't call it written by AI, but it helped me get there a lot faster. So I don't know if that's, and then the visual end, we're starting to do that, obviously with things in Create, we're still more exploring and there's issues, but we're starting to use some also, AI generated visuals. Again, it may not be the final thing we produce, but it's gonna accelerate the process. Does that jive with everyone else's experience?
We found that it's useful also, I think with Jeff, I think from a volume standpoint, when you need a lot, it's going to shoot out a lot. Now, that you don't want to automatically believe what it says is correct. I found that out the hard way. And, so certainly when you've got to write a long thing, but, I've got 3 apps on my phone now that I purchased. We've been using aspects of it from, you want to use it for customer relationship management, the used to have just a chat feature on websites, but is it better to have a chat feature that's connected to AI so that you can get questions answered right there? You don't have to have somebody live waiting. So that's something we've been doing for a couple years, but that's been available. It's not something we invented or created. And now I'd say more like Jeff says, you experiment with it from a copywriting standpoint. But like an old teacher used to say, just because you own a typewriter doesn't mean you're a good writer. And so, that's a situation. People, even if you have AI, how do you recognize what's good and what isn't? That doesn't give you the talent to recognize what's good or what isn't, or what you should be saying and what you shouldn't. So there's still going to be judgment involved. I'm not worried about it coming. I think it's a tool, and just like every other tool that's come before it.
It's another
Embrace
resource.
it.
It's another
Embrace
tool
it.
in your toolbox. I think it helps, especially as a copywriter, when you need to do a ton of research on a subject and even as a journalist, you got to get up to speed on this subject really fast and able to be write competently about it. You can use that instead of like reading through tons of things. It just sort of helps aggregate like, okay, I'm on the right track, but I still have to take my branding and I still have to take my SEO and I still got to take all my other things and create original copy. But I think it gives me a good starting point, I feel like, in order to like get me up to speed quickly. And we've used the regenerative tool in Photoshop as well for design. We use it a lot to like edit photos. It sort of helps regenerate backgrounds and change some things. We've had clients also use like the AI headshots, but we've gotten some weird things back, like an arm's not in the right spot. They gave them weird colored hair. Like I've seen some weird things happen. So it's definitely not there, but you get like 50 headshots for, I don't know, $100 or something.
Right.
I don't know what it costs. But out of that, you maybe only have a couple that you actually would want to use. So I don't know how beneficial that really is when you could hire.
But I think image generation, though, is probably the biggest ethical question right now, because, like just the other day, for the hell of it, I said, I asked it to create Elvis on a motorcycle. Now, clearly, and I don't know why I thought that, but I did, I looked at it, and it's not Elvis Presley, but, at a glance, 60%, 50% people think it is Elvis Presley. So that's, if you use that in ad, should you pay Elvis's estate for that? That's the big question. That you can get close enough, but not be in a real image of a celebrity or a copyrighted image, and right now you get away with it.
A key is understanding how to write the queries. That's basically where you're at, the copywriting, what you're asking it to do. So I'm sure some of your business owners, can I use? Yes, they definitely can. But the technical term is query engineering, which is a little overstated, but it's the idea that how you write the queries, how you interact with whatever form of the AI you're using, ChatGPT, whatever it is. And so that's one thing we're trying to get better at. So that's where the marketer still comes in. How you ask the questions, then it gives you something, then you ask it again, or you request it to do something. And so it's a process, and we're still learning it, but yeah, I'm finding it's a fantastic tool.
Yeah.
Charge clients less because it's taking you less time.
Exactly. And I think that, as a marketer, we obviously can't be experts in every industry that we work in, and we also can't rely 100% on the client to give us that knowledge that's in their head. So I think it's super helpful, especially in maybe like a B2B business where, you might be writing a blog or a piece of content about something that's kind of technical and you don't know, it's a little bit harder to understand. I think it's a very helpful tool as a starting point, like you said, to kind of get that background knowledge in a simplified way, and then you can kind of take it, create the content, and go back to the client and say, is this accurate? Is this correct? And I think that's super helpful, just to kind of sift through all of the info that's on the internet. You can kind of get it in a simplified way to start off.
I agree. From a factual and a grammatical point of view, AI is amazing, right? Like they're going to put that comma in where it needs to be. Everything's going to be right. But like Adrienne was saying, from a branding or like a hyper-local point of view, it's not going to capture that opinion or that emotion that the market might need in that regard. But it definitely has a place.
Yeah, that's where it lacks right now with copy. Is it doesn't have an opinion. It can't give you the brand. It can't get that across.
What's an example of a well-engineered query?
I've seen some. I've not done it this way. I still have some work to do in my query engineering, but I feel like I'm understanding how it works. But I've seen where you will ask it to ask you questions about your business or what you're trying to write about, so that way it can give you the best information. So you'd say, hey, ask me 10 questions about my business in order to write XYZ. And then it'll give you prompts and you respond to those, and then it will spit out what you need that is more customized to you, instead of just generally saying, what is XYZ? You're saying, in order to write about XYZ in my business, what are 10 questions or 20 questions you would need to know from me? And then it's getting more information from you to make that more customized, which I have tried that, and it is helpful. So that's a place I would start.
The greatest queries are iterations. You don't just do one.
Right.
You do one, then you take what it brings to you, and you take that and you iterate and you make it better, and you expand on that. And then some of your best outputs that you're going to get from like GPT you're going to have a series of 20 queries. till you get to the exact one that you want. It's not a one time and you get it. You can get started, like we all talked about, like jump starting your copy with that single prompt, but to get to like almost to a finalized place where you're only going to have an hour or 2 hours for a copywriter, to put their touches on it, it's going to be anywhere from 10 to 20 different iterations till you get there.
So are copywriters going out of business?
No,
I
I think
don't
they're
believe
needed
so.
more now than ever.
Yeah.
I think it's just maybe their jobs will change a bit. You know, we still are going to need people to kind of sift through this content that is generated by AI, and where they may have been writing it from scratch, now they're kind of learning to edit, you know, the AI content and use it as a tool rather than, you know, something that's going to take their job.
And fact check.
Are there any courses? Are the schools teaching this yet, or is it so
There's
new that?
courses now, like Jeff said, with like engineering, query engineering, prompt engineering, of how to best utilize the data set that GPT, is connected to.
Anybody want to add anything more?
The only other place we use it is programmatic with our A/B testing. We used to have to do like manual testing, like A/B testing, if we're going to test a headline or copy or creative. Now we have platforms, AI platforms, where you can put that in, and it can generate 100 different creatives, 100 different headlines for you. And if the budget allows for it, you can have a winner, and you can have a best case of a headline, copy, CTA, and creative, all within about a week.
So maybe it's fair to say, copywriters aren't going to go out of business, but I do think it's going to diminish the audience, but those who remain, they're vital. So I don't know, because we're talking about all that efficiency. So efficiencies usually do create less demand for something, right? Because you're more efficient. So yeah, do I think some copywriters aren't going to have jobs? Do I think some publications like your own are going to rely on it? Maybe need, I'm making it. No one here is going to lose a job, I'm sure, but maybe they have 5 writers, now they need 4 or 3, right? So
Yeah.
do I think it'll have impact? Yes. But do I think copywriting as a profession is going away? No.
And you have it is like any other new profession or industry, it also creates jobs, like you were talking about query engineering. God knows that'll probably be a course soon at college, and somebody will be teaching that, so it will also create, and at least Google, I saw, and Microsoft, leaders in AI, they're going, yeah, there's ethical problems, you guys figure that out. So it's gonna create, another, unfortunately, government agency, probably, to settle a lot of these questions. Is that an original image? Is it stolen? Is it, and same thing with content. So they're basically the big people who are developing, the bigger companies who are developing AI, they're basically saying, well, we're just making it. You guys figure out, how to rule it or how to settle any arguments over it. But it's naturally going to create some jobs on the other side to help people use it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, go
I
ahead.
think it was Italy has already outlawed, GPT isn't allowed using any data from Italy. Yeah, they already said no data from any of our citizens, companies, geography, nothing. They're not allowed. They were the first one to.
So somebody will create a
drew
company
line.
to go detect that, right?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's also a move too, like in the more of the visual arts, like the fashion industry and stuff. I know that in France they were doing, if a photo is airbrushed, now they have to say that it was airbrushed or it was manipulated somehow digitally.
Really?
So yeah, so I'm sure that they'll be saying that now with AI, right? You have to have a disclaimer if they don't fully outlaw it. But to your point, George, absolutely. I mean, when mainframe computers came into being, what, the 50s or the 60s, right, where they came into use in industry and business, and people went crazy. But it really created some of the highest paying jobs out there because those are the people that know how to program or that they know how to do that. So I think you're right. There's a whole new industry that will pop up from it.
What about fakes? Deep fakes and all this stuff we hear about. What is that all about?
Well, it's really what Steve was
it's
saying.
machine learning, yeah.
It's kind of
You can't
Wild
stop
West
it.
right now,
Yeah.
and there is a lot of concerns, about that. There are deep fakes. There's going to continue to be. Hopefully, there's tools that help you identify that this is a deep fake. I don't know whether you're talking about in marketing or obviously just general society, but those are realities, and that's part of what And, is the government come in and start doing a lot of regulation? There's a good part of that. There's a really bad part of that. So, right now, we don't really know how exactly,
And Jeff isn't really here right now.
That's right.
He's a deep fake.
I would have brought a version with hair if I was just going to.
Well, obviously, there's a political conversation to deep fakes and disinformation, and I don't want to get into that. But in terms of when you're marketing a company, or do you have to be on the lookout for things like that might impact a company? In other words, somebody posts some stuff that isn't true, or
They've always done that. I think, it just helps them get more content faster, but also helps you, help you.
But if you
counter
get an
it
AI
also.
generated video image, that you could, I suppose, like in the Bud Light situation, you could have a fake AI generated some celebrity either, for Bud Light or against Bud Light, and they're not actually there. Could that happen? I guess, but what's the motive of the party? What are they going to get out of that? Would a corporation actually do that versus another corporation? So, there are concerns. I guess we're still right now discovering how bad it is or isn't going to be.
So going back to Bud Light, with the polarization of society, you really have to be hip to that, don't you, as marketers? I mean,
I think it's sort of like a little bit internal. You can kind of tell when you're sort of like getting to that line to sometimes where like, right, we're venturing into territory where there may be backlash, and just being cognizant of that, and then also just having that conversation with your client, like, all right, where are your where are you at on these issues? If we touch them, if we don't, what do we do? What do we say? So I think it's just important to have open conversations about those things, and also have policies in place to respond quickly when if there is backlash.
But it's also understanding your audience. For example, here, Leonard Truck and Trailer, it has that ammo story. Everybody sees the billboards. I mean, they're wild. They're very much pro Second Amendment. But that's their audience, right? They're selling to people who want to buy guns. So they're talking about give your kid a gun for Christmas, right? I mean, on one level, you could say, well, they shouldn't be doing it. Well, that's who their audience is, right? So that's where Bud Light again was so off base. That their audience isn't interested in those issues or doesn't want to have it, in their view, shoved down their throats. Leonard Truck and Trailer makes no bones about we're Second Amendment. We think everybody should have a gun. Doing wild and funny, if you think they're funny things, but it makes sense for their audience. So that's totally fine.
And I think from our perspective, the clients that know themselves the most and have their guidelines defined, where we can push right up onto it. I think that it's easier for us to work with them rather than. Is there always a gray area? Is this good? Is this bad? Is this going to get approved? Do we know? The clients that know themselves, know who they are, and have it spelled out for us on how to create their content and where that line is. It makes it easier for us to work with them.
well, we're getting near the end of the discussion, so I wanted to go back to just the basic question of marketing versus branding. What is the difference, and is there a difference?
We're mansplaining over here. I want to make sure we hear.
Yeah, I think there definitely is a huge difference. I think, in my opinion at least, marketing is kind of how you, like the company you would think of, when you want to buy a pair of shoes or you want to buy a car or something like that, and it's promoting the products that they sell and things like that. I think branding is more of, how you feel about that company, their voice, their kind of attitude, their look, their logos, their colors, kind of just everything about that company. So I think the difference is, marketing is kind of selling the things that they sell, and that's our job. And the branding side of it is kind of making them look good and how they appear to, the consumer.
I agree. I think marketing too is more reactionary sometimes or more fluid. So if you put a marketing campaign out for something and the response you're getting isn't great, not Bud Light, but smaller ones, you can shift or you can pivot over to something else, change that up, get what you want. But the brand to me is more it's more stable. It's how people feel about you. What they always say, your first marketing 101, they always say Cadillac. How do you feel about Cadillac, right? And everyone says, oh, it means that you've reached the pinnacle of success, you've done all of this. Well, Cadillac's had some big failures with their spokespeople or influencers. I can't name it off the bat, but their market share went down for a while. But still, that brand remains as quality. So yeah, I think marketing is much more fluid, brand is much more stable.
And I think in order to be successful at your marketing, you have to understand your branding. I feel like it's like, to me, the branding comes first and then the marketing strategy comes. So like to know yourself is the most important thing. So to know your company and to know your brand, and then be able to actually communicate that and then put a plan in place to actually disseminate it's really the first step.
I would say the branding is part of marketing. It's the cornerstone, as everyone's been saying here. It's the basic thought, image, or feeling company or people have, or your customers have about your company or your product. And to me, the branding part should involve, making sure that the branding right from the get-go is appropriate. We've changed a lot of brand names and images, logos, etc., of companies over the years simply because times have changed, or their market has changed, the people they sell to change, the products that they used to sell are no longer relevant, so the brand name they had is no longer relevant. They want to create, sometimes just want to create a new excitement or interest in their companies. So sometimes that's worth rebranding. So that's where it all starts, because they want people to have that impression from the get-go, the image, the name, etc., that are connected to that company. So they might have to change it if that's necessary. And any company that goes over 40, 50 years, they're probably looking at doing that.
So we think of brand as it's the most valuable and tangible asset that any company should have. It may not be because they haven't really invested in it, but it can be or should be. And we define brand as the perception of the value of a company, product, or service in the marketplace. But then, of course, what are the things that go into the perception of that value? So I guess an example might be if you think of Apple's annually almost always the most valuable brand in the world. Not necessarily the most valuable company, the most valuable brand. But if you think about it, the brand that Steve Jobs developed, it's still based on those same principles. All these new products, all these new technologies, but yet elegance, simplicity, great design, powerful user interfaces. There's certain things, it doesn't matter what you look at in all the iterations, almost all of them, there's a couple of misses, right, fit that. So that's why that's the brand, that's the essential qualities. How the stores look, how the store experience is. Those things endure even though the products change. And you may change your marketing for certain products, right? But those are the enduring things. And so when a company can identify those, know those things, then your brand becomes a competitive advantage, even when you don't have the best price, or even if your product isn't quite up to someone else's. Like, was it Steve that said about, you're saying Androids are better than, yeah. I'm not sure I agree with that, but okay. But people love, I like my iPhone. I have someone else, an emotional affinity with the idea of Apple. Well, yeah, I'm a little bit of a rebel, whether I am or not, who knows, but they perceive that. So those are those things, those intangible assets.
And the best brand in the world, the best branding in the world isn't going to make up for a crappy product, right? Correct. Or service. So if you have, if it's a bad product or service, you could, the reason Cadillac is considered the Cadillac of, et cetera, it's because it makes a good product. So, not that it's just expensive, it's a little more money than a regular car, but it's a better car too. So, you can't just count on the name or the look of it to bring you business.
I always give an elementary example of the marketing is Chick-fil-A. Their marketing is they make a great chicken sandwich, but their branding is their drive-through you can get through in 30 seconds. Yep. But they don't market that. That's their brand. That's what they make people feel. That's what people think about them.
And even closed on Sundays is part of their brand. It gives the idea we're a family-friendly oriented business. That closed on Sundays. A lot of people have argued over years, how much more could they make if they're open on Sundays? But they would say no. They do it for religious principles. At least they initially did. But now it's part of their brand. Yeah, we're closed on Sundays. Yeah, we can make more money. We care about our people. We care about our families, right. And that's part of their brand. One of my local companies the same way. They're closed on Sundays, and they feel that's part of their brand. Their brand. This is who you want to do business with.
Let's wrap up with some final thoughts, starting with George.
Final thoughts? I would say that if you're talking about the marketing industry today, I think it's still healthy and well. I think, like any industry, we have to pivot and adapt to new technology, but that's always been the case. I remember we had the first laser writer in Youngstown. We were thrilled, and it's this big. It's the same one that's this big today, and it was $10,000. And so you just have to adapt to what's going on. You can't be afraid of technology. You have to embrace it. I like it. I like changes. I like changes that improve things, I should say. And so overall, I'm excited about the industry. And honestly, I think we're helping more people than ever. God bless them if they want to attempt to do it on their own. That's always been the case. But I think overall, our expertise as Valley marketing experts has increased, or should say improved. And therefore, I think we're able to help our clients a lot better.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we probably all share that there are times when we feel that so in other words, here's what I guess, let me start over on that. Most people wouldn't try to do their own accounting or legal work or other professional services, right? They are going to work with someone, where a lot of people feel they can do their own marketing. And occasionally they can do it well, but mostly they can't. We've talked about the increasing sophistication of all the choices. And so just very impressed with all my colleagues here. It's like, whatever you do, hire professionals. That's too important. Of course, you should have a voice, but you can't be objective. I struggle doing our own marketing far more than with other clients. I can't be objective. That's part of it. And then, of course, the skill sets. And so, looking right at the camera, hire professionals. Sure, hire Prodigal would be awesome, but all these people I know would also do a great job, and far better than you can do internally almost in every case.
Andrea, thank you for having us. I just want to start with that. I think here in the Valley, it's hopefully people coming up, they see the experts that are here on this panel, and we stop losing the talent that comes through our ranks and feels the need that they have to go to Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Texas to achieve the success that they want to achieve in their career. I hope that's what they get the most out of this, is that there are great people to work with and work for here in the Valley, and I hope that they understand that this is a great place to grow up, raise a family, and that's the thing that I want to get across the most, that hopefully our talent stays here.
That's good.
And that we're as good as anywhere else.
Absolutely.
Yep,
Absolutely.
definitely. I agree with what they had all said, and I also think that, with marketing obviously changing and, like we discussed, having so many options, I don't think that it should be something that businesses are scared of, and confusing that there's so many options. I think it just shows, how important it is to hire professionals, and also that, there are options that will work for their business. If they're like, I can't do marketing, billboards don't work for me, there's a million other things that we can try and recommend. So I think that it's exciting that there's a lot of opportunities, and there's always going to be more.
Definitely. I would say that to always remember, whether you are the marketing company, the client, or the citizen, communication is key and integrity is key. So any way that we can clarify those amongst each other or with our clients is always going to be to the benefit of everything, whether it's the bottom line or just sort of society in general. And this has been a real pleasure working with all of you here today. This has been fun. So thank you for having me.
I would just add that I think in this market, it's always surprised me the variety of agencies that we have, and we all sort of have our different niche. And I feel like as a client, I think it's important to find the right agency that sort of meets your needs. Are you more of a data-driven person? Are you looking for more of the communications ends of things? I think it says a lot to the talent we have here, and the people we have here, that they were able to sustain so many agencies in this market that do a great job. So I think if you're a client in the area looking for an agency or looking for a marketing professional, you definitely have a wide array of options of talented people to work with. And I think it says something great about who's here.
The Business Journal Roundtable series is sponsored by iSynergy, creative digital advertising.